The mining station floated in the dark between the stars. It was old and broken in places, with metal walls that creaked when the wind from the air systems blew through the halls. Lieutenant Daniel Hayes stood at the window and looked out at the empty space around them. He had been here for 3 months now, and every day felt longer than the last. The station was called Sovereign, and it sat in the Kepler belt where rocks and ice drifted in the darkness. 40 people lived here, pulling metal and minerals from the dead stones that floated past. It was hard work and lonely work, but it paid well enough that people came anyway. Daniel pressed his hand against the cold glass and sighed. Behind him, the bridge was quiet except for the soft beeping of machines. Officer Katie Morrison sat at her station, watching the screens that showed what was happening in the space around them. Commander Greg Palmer sat in his chair, reading reports on a small tablet. Everything changed when Katie sat up straight and said, "I have something on the sensors." Palmer looked up from his tablet. His face was lined and tired, but his eyes were sharp. "What kind of something?" Katie's fingers moved fast across her screen. "Multiple contacts. They are big, really big, and the computer says they are alive." Daniel turned from the window and walked closer. "Alive out here?" The Kepler belt was supposed to be empty of life. Nothing lived in the cold dark between the rocks. That was why the mining station was here. It was safe, or it was supposed to be. Katie shook her head as she looked at her screen. "The computer is calling them dragons." The word made everyone on the bridge go still. Everyone knew about the Drakkar. They were an old race. Older than humans had been traveling in space. They looked like the dragons from Earth's old stories, with scales and wings and fire in their breath. They were smart and strong, and they stayed away from human space. When they did come near, it usually meant trouble. "Power down everything we do not need," Palmer ordered. His voice was calm, but Daniel could hear the worry underneath. Let's not give them a reason to look at us. But it was already too late. 6 ships came out from behind the asteroids. They were not like human ships, all metal and straight lines. These ships looked alive, with curves and colors that glowed in the darkness. They moved through space like hunting animals searching for something. "They are looking for something," Katie whispered. "See how they move? They are searching." Daniel moved back to the window and watched. The dragon ship spread out, moving between the rocks in a pattern. Then he saw it. A small pod tumbled through space, spinning slowly as it drifted toward the station. It had marks on its side, symbols that looked like the ones he had seen in books about the Drakkar. "Commander, we have an object heading our way," Daniel said. "It looks like an escape pod. It has dragon writing on it." Palmer stood up and came to look. "Where is it going to hit?" Katie checked her screen. "Section 7. It will hit in less than 4 minutes." Section 7 was where most of the crew lived. There were sleeping rooms there, a place to eat, and a room where people could relax when they were not working. If the pod hit there, people could die. Palmer looked around at his crew. Daniel could see him thinking, weighing the choices. They could try to stop the pod and maybe make the dragons angry, or they could let it crash and maybe kill their own people. "All crew, prepare for impact," Palmer said into his radio. "Hayes, Morrison, come with me. We are going to Section 7. The 3 of them ran through the narrow halls of the station. Red lights flashed and a loud alarm rang in their ears. The station shook when the pod hit, and Daniel had to grab the wall to keep from falling. Somewhere ahead, metal screamed as it tore. When they reached Section 7, it was a mess. The pod had smashed through 2 walls before stopping in the recreation room. Wires hung from the ceiling, sparking and smoking. The air smelled like burning plastic and something else, something sharp and chemical. Palmer pulled out his gun as they got closer to the pod. Daniel knew it would not do much good against an adult dragon, but it made them feel a little safer. The pod's door opened with a hiss and white vapor poured out like fog. 5 small shapes fell out onto the floor. They were not big warriors or important dragons. They were babies. Each one was about the size of a human child, with soft scales that shimmered with different colors. Their wings were tiny and hung limply at their sides. Their eyes were wide and scared. "They are just babies," Katie breathed. She took a step forward, her hand reaching out before she even thought about it. The baby dragons huddled together on the cold floor. They made small chirping sounds like birds, but deeper. They looked weak and thin, and their scales were dull in places where they should have been bright. Daniel knelt down slowly. He made himself small, so he would not scare them more than they already were. One of the babies, braver than the others, crawled toward him on shaky legs. It had a silver stripe down its back that caught the light. The baby dragon looked up at Daniel with golden eyes. In those eyes, Daniel saw fear. Pure, simple fear. It was the same fear he had seen in the eyes of lost children back on Earth. Fear did not care if you had scales or skin. It was the same everywhere. Daniel held out his hand, palm up, moving very slowly. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're safe now." The baby dragon touched his hand with its nose. The touch was warm and dry, not cold like he expected. Something passed between them in that moment. Something that had no words. A connection. An understanding. Outside the station, the dragon ships had found where the pod went. Their sensors had locked onto the station, and now 6 warships surrounded the small mining base. On the bridge, alarms were going off as the targeting systems of the dragon ships came online. Katie's radio crackled. "Bridge to Commander Palmer. Sir, they are powering up their weapons. What do we do?" Palmer looked at the baby dragons, then at Daniel, then back at the radio in his hand. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Tell them we have their children. Tell them the children are safe. And tell them if they want to talk, we will talk." The baby dragon that had touched Daniel's hand made a soft sound and pressed closer. The other 4 watched from where they huddled together. They were so small, so helpless. Someone had put them in that pod and sent them out to die in the cold of space. Daniel picked up the brave baby dragon carefully. It weighed almost nothing. He could feel its heart beating fast under the soft scales. "You're safe now," he said again, and he meant it. The dragon ships moved closer. Their weapons glowed with building energy. On the station, 43 people waited to see if they would live or die. And in Section 7, 5 baby dragons looked at the humans who had caught them when they fell. And for the first time in days, they stopped being so afraid. Palmer spoke into his radio again. "Get me every blanket we have." And someone raid the kitchen. "These little ones look like they have not eaten in a long time." Katie smiled even though her hands were shaking. "You are going to feed them?" "Sir, those ships outside could blow us apart." Palmer looked at the baby dragons and shrugged. "Then we will die having done the right thing." "I can live with that. Or die with it, as the case may be." The baby dragon in Daniel's arms chirped again, and this time it sounded almost like a question, as if it was asking if the human really meant it. If they were really safe now. Daniel looked into those golden eyes and nodded. "Yes," he said. "You're safe. I promise." Outside, the dragon ships waited. Inside, humans and dragons met for the first time, not as strangers, but as people trying to help children who needed help. And in that moment, something began that would change everything for both their species. The alarm kept ringing. The ships kept their weapons ready. But in Section 7, Daniel held a baby dragon and made a promise he intended to keep no matter what came next. The dragon warships moved into position around the Sovereign Station like wolves circling wounded prey. Each ship was massive, bigger than anything the small mining station could hope to fight. Commander Palmer stood on the bridge and watched the tactical display with a growing sense of doom. If those ships decided to attack, his station would last maybe 3 minutes. Katie's hands flew across her console. "Sir, they are sending a message." Audio only. Palmer straightened his back and pulled his uniform straight even though no one could see him. "Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was deep and made the walls vibrate. It had harmonics that were not quite like any sound Daniel had ever heard. The computer translated it into flat mechanical words. "Human station. You have taken what belongs to the Flame Wing Pack. Give back our young. If you do this, your death will be quick." Not exactly friendly, Daniel thought from where he stood in Section 7. He had moved the baby dragons into a storage room that still had working air and heat. The crew had brought blankets and someone had found preserved meat in the kitchen. The babies had eaten like they were starving, which they probably were. Palmer took a breath and spoke. "This is Commander Gregory Palmer of the Sovereign Mining Station. The young dragons crashed into our station. They are not hurt. We are keeping them safe. We do not want to harm them." There was a long pause. Daniel could hear other dragon voices in the background speaking in their own language. When the main voice came back, it was colder than before. "You say you protect what you have stolen. This is the thinking of prey animals. We will board your station. Do not try to stop us." The channel went dead. In the storage room, Daniel sat with the baby dragons. The station's doctor, Lieutenant Amy Cole, was checking them with her medical scanner. She was a small woman with quick hands and kind eyes. Right now, those eyes were worried. They were starving, Amy said, looking at the readings on her scanner. And they had no water for a long time. Whatever happened to them, they have been in that pod for days, maybe more than a week. The biggest baby dragon, the one with the silver stripe that Daniel had named Silver in his head, stayed close to him. It followed him around the small room like a puppy. The other four had curled up against Amy, who had wrapped them in a thermal blanket that kept them warm. We should give them names, Amy said quietly. I cannot keep calling them the blue one or the one with the hurt wing. Daniel looked at Silver. This one is Silver. Because of the stripe, Amy smiled a little. The green one with the injured wing can be Jade. The copper-colored girl is Penny. The dark blue boy is Navy. And this little troublemaker trying to eat my scanner is Scout. Scout chirped and tried to bite the medical device again, as if responding to the name. They understand us, Daniel said. Not the words, maybe, but they know we are trying to help. The door to the storage room opened. Palmer came in with Katie and 6 security guards carrying weapons. The baby dragons immediately scrambled behind Daniel and Amy, their small claws scratching on the metal floor. Silver pressed against Daniel's leg and made a low, worried sound. The dragons are boarding the station, Palmer said without any greeting. They want their babies back. We are going to give them back. Amy stood up, putting herself between Palmer and the babies. Commander, with respect, we do not know what we would be giving them back to. These babies were abandoned. Someone put them in that pod to die. They were starving and alone. Palmer's face was hard. That is not our problem, Doctor. We are miners, not babysitters for alien children. There are 6 warships outside with enough weapons to turn the station into dust. We give back the babies and maybe we all live to see tomorrow. Daniel stood up, placing himself next to Amy. Then they will have to go through me first, sir. Lieutenant Hayes, stand down. That is an order. No, sir. I will not do that. Daniel's voice was steady. We took these babies in. We told them they were safe. I will not break that promise just because their parents showed up with guns. Palmer's hand moved toward his gun. Hayes, I will arrest you if I have to. Before things could get worse, Silver walked out from behind Daniel. The small dragon went right up to Commander Palmer and looked up at him. Silver made a low rumbling sound. It was a questioning sound. Why would this human threaten the other human who had been kind? Palmer looked down at the baby dragon. In that small, scaled face, he saw something that made him stop. Maybe he saw his own daughter's eyes. Maybe he just saw a child who needed help. His hand fell away from his gun. Damn it, Palmer said quietly. Damn it all. The docking alarm sounded throughout the station. The dragons had arrived. The dragon boarding party moved through the sovereign station like a force of nature. Each warrior was huge, standing 3 meters tall. Their scales were covered with armor that gleamed under the lights. At the front walked a female dragon whose scales were deep crimson red. She wore markings that showed she was royalty. Commander Palmer met them at the junction that led to Section 7. His small security team stood with him, but their weapons were lowered. Everyone knew human guns would barely scratch dragon armor. The red dragon stopped 3 meters away, her golden eyes fixed on Palmer like a predator looking at prey. When she spoke, the translator made her words clear. Where are my children, human? Safe, Palmer replied, keeping his voice steady even though every part of him wanted to run. And they will stay safe until we have answers. A low growl came from deep in the dragon's chest. The walls shook with the sound. You dare make demands? You hold our children hostage and speak of conditions. Those children were abandoned, Palmer shot back, his own anger rising. Starving, dehydrated, left to drift in space. We are not giving them back until we know they will be safe. For a moment, Palmer thought the dragon would simply kill him. Her claws came out, each one as long as a knife. Her mouth opened to show rows of sharp teeth, but then something in her expression changed. The fury was still there, but under it, Palmer saw something else. Grief. You know nothing of our ways, the dragon said, her voice dropping lower. Nothing of what we face. Then tell me, Palmer said, seeing a chance. Talk to me. Help me understand, the dragon's head tilted slightly. After a long moment, she nodded once. I will speak, but I will see my children. Now. Palmer made the call. Daniel brought the 5 baby dragons to the junction. The moment they saw the red dragon, they started chirping and calling out. They rushed toward her on wobbly legs. The big dragon dropped down to meet them, and the reunion was fierce and gentle at the same time. She nuzzled each baby, checking them for injuries. But Silver, after greeting the red dragon, turned and walked back to Daniel. The baby pressed against his leg and looked up at him with clear affection. The red dragon's eyes narrowed. "You have bonded with my son. I helped him," Daniel said. "That is all?" "Not to dragons," the red dragon replied. She stood up to her full height. 3 months ago, there was a challenge to my leadership. A male dragon from a rival pack wanted to take my place as leader. He had to fight me to prove he was stronger. I won the fight, but his followers would not accept it. She looked at the baby dragons. They stole my children. All 5 of them, taken from their nest while I was away at a meeting with other dragon leaders. They put my children in an escape pod and launched them into space. They wanted my children to die slowly to make me suffer. Then they would challenge me again when I was weakest with grief. Amy stepped forward. "But you found them." "We tracked the pod signal," the red dragon confirmed. "But it broke during a meteor storm. We lost the signal for 2 days. 2 days of not knowing if my children lived or died." Her voice cracked. "When the signal came back near this station and then went silent when the pod crashed, I thought I had lost them." Palmer felt his throat tighten. He was a father himself. He understood that kind of fear. "They are safe," he said quietly, "because of Lieutenant Hayes and Dr. Cole. Your children are safe." The red dragon looked at Daniel and Amy, then at the other humans who had gathered in the corridor. Her expression went through several changes before settling on something that might have been respect. "You fed them," she said. "You warmed them. You protected them from the cold void." "We did what anyone should do for lost children," Amy replied. The dragon's translator made a sound like laughter, but with no humor in it. "Anyone? You think this is common? You think most species would shelter the young of another without asking for payment or alliance?" She shook her large head. "You are either very foolish or very brave, humans." "Perhaps both," Silver chirped at Daniel's side. Daniel knelt down to the baby's level. "We just did what was right." The red dragon watched this with sharp interest. Then she made a decision. "Daniel Hayes, you have shown honor. The Flamewing Pack owes you a debt. More than that, you have proven that humans possess what we call shakara, the courage to protect those who cannot protect themselves. It is our highest virtue." She turned to Commander Palmer. "I would ask something of you, human commander. Not as a threat, but as one leader to another." Palmer nodded. "I am listening." "Let Daniel Hayes and Amy Cole come with us to our homeworld. Not as prisoners, but as honored guests. There are members of my pack who believe humans have no honor, no compassion. They use this belief to justify hostility, but these two have proven otherwise." She looked at the babies playing nearby. "They saved my children and may have saved the chance for peace between our peoples." Palmer looked at Daniel and Amy. The choice was theirs. Both of them met his eyes and nodded without hesitation. "Then it is settled," Palmer said. "But understand this. If anything happens to them, humanity will remember. We protect our own too." The red dragon's translator made what might have been a smile. "Of that, Commander, I have no doubt." The dragon homeworld was called Pyaxis, and it was unlike anything Daniel had ever imagined. From space, it looked like a ball of deep red and gold. The surface was covered with active volcanoes that made glowing rivers of lava across entire continents. The air was thick and full of sulfur that would kill an unprotected human in minutes, but the dragons had given them special suits that cleaned the air and kept the temperature comfortable. "It is beautiful," Amy whispered as their shuttle went down through the clouds. Below them, vast cities rose from the volcanic plains. The buildings were made of crystal and seemed to grow from the ground rather than being built. Silver sat on Daniel's lap. The baby dragon had refused to leave his side since they left the mining station. The other 4 babies were with their mother at the front of the shuttle. The red dragon had told them her name was Kira, and she was the Flamecaller, the leader of the Flamewing Pack. "He will need a proper name," Kira had said during the trip. "Silver is good as a nickname, but dragons are given their true names during the flame ceremony. That is when they first breathe fire. The ceremony shows us what path they will walk in life." The shuttle landed in a huge courtyard surrounded by hundreds of dragons of all sizes and colors. News of the baby's rescue had spread quickly. The crowd that gathered was curious, suspicious, and in some cases openly hostile. Daniel could feel the weight of their stares as he and Amy walked down the ramp behind Kira and her children. A large male dragon with black scales and scars across his face pushed through the crowd. "This is wrong, Flamecaller. You bring humans to our sacred ground, to the heart of our pack." Kira's response was immediate and fierce. She moved between the male and the humans, her wings spreading wide in a show of dominance. I bring those who saved my children when your friend Darkscale Vex tried to murder them, Ironjaw. Or have you forgotten that you stood silent when he challenged me? Ironjaw's eyes went wide and he stepped back. The crowd around them murmured with shock and anger. It seemed the full story of the babies being stolen was not widely known yet. Kira continued, her voice carrying across the courtyard. These humans found my children dying in space. They fed them, warmed them, protected them without asking for payment or alliance. They showed Shikara when members of our own pack showed only cowardice and betrayal. An old female dragon with pale amber scales stepped forward. If what you say is true, Flamecaller, then these humans have done us a great service. But words are wind. Let them prove their worth before the Flame Council. Kira bowed her head respectfully. Wisescale Mora speaks truth. I request the council meet at dawn to hear testimony and witness the bond between my son and the human called Daniel. The next several hours passed in a blur. Daniel and Amy were given rooms in Kira's home, a huge complex of stone and crystal that overlooked the city. Servants brought them food and water. The food was traditional dragon cuisine, but their suit's computers said it was safe for humans to eat. This is insane, Amy said, sitting on a low bench designed for dragons. Her feet dangled like a child's. We are literally the first humans to ever walk on this world. Daniel stood at the window, watching Silver play in the courtyard below with his siblings. Kira watched over them with fierce protection. Did you see their faces in the crowd? Some of them looked like they wanted to kill us. Can you blame them? Amy replied. We are an unknown species showing up on their homeworld right after some of their own tried to kill babies. They do not know if we are heroes or spies. Katie Morrison, who had insisted on coming with them despite Commander Palmer's protests, entered carrying a tablet. I have been researching dragon culture through our suit computers. The Flame Council is their highest governing body. They are made up of the oldest members of each pack. They are judges, historians, and keepers of their laws. What happens if they decide we are a threat? Daniel asked. Katie met his eyes. According to their legal codes, threats to the pack are dealt with permanently. That night, Daniel could not sleep. He sat in the courtyard under the planet's 2 moons, watching the distant volcanoes paint the sky with their glow. Silver had escaped from where the babies slept and had curled up beside him. The young dragon's body was warm even through Daniel's suit. You are worried, a voice said in English. Kira came from the shadows, moving quietly for something so large. I can smell fear on humans. It has a particular scent. Will the council side with us? Daniel asked directly. Or are Amy and I going to die tomorrow? Kira settled down, her eyes reflecting the volcanic light. I do not know. The council is wise but cautious. They have seen species rise and fall. They have witnessed betrayals and false alliances. Some of them believe humanity is a disease that will one day threaten the dragons. And what do you believe? I believe that anyone who would protect a child that is not their own, at great risk to themselves, has something rare and precious. She reached out with one large claw and gently touched Silver's scales. My son trusts you. In 300 years of life, I have learned that the young see truths that we elders often miss. Daniel looked at the baby sleeping peacefully against him. I did not do anything special. I just could not let them suffer. That, Kira said quietly, is exactly why the council will either embrace you or destroy you. Compassion without expecting reward is dangerous. It challenges the way we have understood the universe for thousands of years. As dawn came, painting the sky in shades of orange and red, Daniel stood before the Flame Council with Amy and Katie at his side. 12 ancient dragons sat in a half-circle of carved stone thrones. Their eyes gleamed with intelligence and age beyond human understanding. Wisescale Mora, who seemed to be the council's eldest member, spoke first. Daniel Hayes, Amy Cole, Katie Morrison of the species called humanity. You stand before the Flame Council to answer for your actions. Speak truthfully, for we can taste lies in the air. For the next 3 hours, Daniel told them everything. He described finding the pod, caring for the babies, the standoff with Kira, and the decision to travel to Pyaxis. He held nothing back, even admitting his fears and doubts. When he finished, the council talked among themselves in their native tongue. Their translator devices were turned off on purpose. Finally, Mora spoke again. We have heard your words. We have spoken with Flamecaller Kira. We have watched the bond between you and the baby called Silver. She paused, her ancient eyes studying Daniel. The council has made its decision. The silence was total. Daniel could hear his own heartbeat. Amy's hand gripped his arm tightly. Behind them, Silver chirped softly, the sound small and frightened in the vast stone chamber. Mora rose slowly from her throne. The other council members did the same, creating a half-circle of ancient, towering figures that cast long shadows. For 3,000 years, Mora began, her voice echoing off the walls. The dragons have kept one principle above all others. Trust must be earned through fire. We do not offer our friendship easily. We do not open our homes to strangers. We have been betrayed too many times by too many species who wore masks of peace while planning conquest. Daniel's heart sank. This sounded like the beginning of rejection, maybe something worse. But Mora continued. Yet our very founding stories speak of a time before such thinking. They tell of the first pack, who shared their fire with any who were lost in the cold dark. They remind us that strength without compassion is just brutality, and honor without mercy is simple cruelty. She stepped down from her platform and walked toward Daniel. Despite his suit's protection, he could feel the heat coming from her ancient scales. You found 5 dying children of a species not your own. You could have ignored them and sealed the doors to save your station's resources. You could have pushed them back into space to avoid the problems their presence would bring. These would have been rational choices that survival could justify. Mora stopped right in front of Daniel, so close he had to look up to meet her eyes. Instead, you fed them your own food. You gave them warmth from your own generators. You stood between them and those who would return them to uncertain fates. And when offered the chance to stay safely in your own territory, you chose to come into ours knowing you might never return. She tilted her head. Tell me, Daniel Hayes, are all humans so remarkably foolish? Despite everything, Daniel found himself smiling. Pretty much, yes. A sound went through the chamber. A deep rumbling that his translator said was laughter. The council members were actually laughing. Mora's expression softened. The Flame Council recognizes the Shikara shown by Daniel Hayes, Amy Cole, and Katie Morrison. You have shown true honor, unmarked by hope of reward or alliance. This is rare. This is precious. She raised her voice. Therefore, we grant you the title of Flame Friends, the first humans to bear this honor. You may walk freely among any dragon pack. You may call on our aid as we may call on yours, and your names will be written in our histories as those who built the first bridge between our species. Amy let out a breath. Katie openly wiped tears from her eyes. But Daniel's attention was on Silver, who had broken free and was racing across the chamber floor on unsteady legs. Silver reached Daniel and immediately started climbing up his suit, using the tough material as handholds until he sat on Daniel's shoulder. The baby dragon nuzzled against his helmet, chirping happily. The sight brought sounds of approval from the council members watching. There is one more matter, Kira said, stepping forward. In her claws she held a fancy box carved from volcanic glass. Daniel Hayes, my son, has chosen you. In all our history, no baby dragon has ever bonded with a being from another species. This has never happened before. This is important, she opened the box. Inside was a pendant that looked like fire frozen in crystal, orange and red, woven together in complex patterns. Among dragons, when a baby bonds with an adult, that adult becomes their teacher. They are responsible for showing them the ways of the pack. I cannot ask this of you. You have your own life, your own people, but I offer you this. Become Silver's second teacher. Visit when you can. Teach him of humanity as I teach him of dragons. Let him be a living bridge between our kinds. Daniel looked at the pendant, then at Silver on his shoulder, then at the dozens of dragons watching. He thought of Commander Palmer back at the mining station, probably worried about what was happening. He thought of Earth so far away and the billions of humans who had no idea that today, everything had changed. I accept, he said. Kira placed the pendant around his neck. Silver chirped happily and breathed a tiny puff of smoke that fogged Daniel's helmet. The baby's first flame, weak but there. The chamber filled with approval, the sound of dozens of dragons roaring their support, making dust fall from the ancient stones. Over the next several days, Daniel learned what it meant to be a flame friend. He and Amy were given a tour of the city, walking through markets where dragons sold everything from weapons to food to artwork. Children, human-sized baby dragons, would run up to touch their suits before darting away, giggling in their chirping way. They visited the Hall of Histories, a massive library carved into a volcanic mountain. Ancient dragons who served as historians showed them records going back thousands of years. Wars, alliances, births, deaths, all recorded in flowing script on crystal tablets that glowed with inner light. "Your species is young," one of the historians said, an old male with grayscales named Ashkeeper. "You have been in space for 200 of your years. We have been traveling the stars for 10,000. In that time we have seen many species rise and think themselves mighty, only to fall into dust." "What makes a species survive?" Amy asked, genuinely curious. Ashkeeper thought for a moment. "Adaptability, wisdom, the ability to change when change is needed, but most importantly the willingness to see other beings as people, not just resources or threats." He looked at Daniel with Silver perched on his shoulder as always. "Your kind may be young and foolish in many ways, but you have something we lost for a long time. You still believe in helping others simply because it is right." Katie spent her time learning about dragon technology. Their ships, their weapons, their energy systems all were based on biological processes that human science barely understood. A dragon engineer named Copperscale showed her how their ships grew rather than being built. Cultivated in vast biogardens where metal and organic material fused into living vessels. "Could humans learn to make these?" Katie asked, staring at a half-grown fighter ship that pulsed with soft light. Copperscale made a sound of consideration. "Perhaps, if you are willing to learn. If you can be patient. Your kind tends to want everything quickly, from what we have heard." "Fair point," Katie admitted, but not everything was friendly. Daniel could feel the eyes of certain dragons on him wherever he went. Ironjaw, the scarred male who had challenged Kira in the courtyard, watched from a distance with clear hostility. Others whispered when the humans passed, words the translators did not catch, but the tone was clear. One evening, as Daniel walked through Kira's courtyard with Silver, Ironjaw approached. Two other large males flanked him, their body language aggressive. "You should not be here, human," Ironjaw said, his translator making his words cold and flat. "You do not belong among us." Daniel stopped but did not back away. "The Flame Council says otherwise." "The Council is old and foolish," Ironjaw spat. "They see kindness and think it means strength. But I see the truth. You are weak. Your species is weak. You take in strays and call it honor. Real honor is strength. Real honor is dominance." Silver hissed from Daniel's shoulder, a tiny sound of defiance. Ironjaw laughed, a harsh sound. "Even the baby mocks me. This is what comes of letting humans corrupt our young. Leave them alone, Ironjaw." Kira's voice cut through the courtyard like a blade. She emerged from the main dwelling, her scales gleaming in the light from the two moons. "Or do you wish to challenge me again? We both know how that ended last time." Ironjaw's claws extended, but he did not move forward. "This is not over, Flamecaller. Your human pets will bring ruin to us all. When that day comes, remember that I warned you." He turned and left with his companions. Kira watched them go, her expression troubled. "I am sorry you had to see that," she said to Daniel. "Ironjaw represents a faction within our society that fears change. They see any weakness, any compassion as a threat to our survival." "Are they powerful?" Daniel asked. "Powerful enough," Kira admitted. "They control 3 of the 12 major packs. If they united with others who share their views, they could challenge the Council's decision. They could start a civil war." The weight of those words settled on Daniel like a physical thing. He had come here to help 5 baby dragons. He had not meant to start a war. As if sensing his thoughts, Silver nuzzled against him and made a comforting sound. The baby dragon had grown in the days since they arrived on Pyaxis. His scales were brighter, his wings stronger. Soon he would be ready for his flame ceremony. "When will Silver get his true name?" Daniel asked. "In 3 days," Kira said. "At dawn. All 5 of my children will take the ceremony together. It is traditionally a private affair, only for family, but I would like you to be there. You are family now, whether others accept it or not." The next 3 days passed quickly. Daniel spent his time with Silver, teaching the baby dragon about Earth and humanity, while Silver taught him dragon games and showed him secret places in the city. They climbed to the top of the tallest spire and watched the sun set over the volcanic plains. They played in the thermal pools that dotted Kira's estate. They were, despite everything, just a man and a child becoming friends. Amy spent her time with the other 4 babies, especially Jade, whose wing was slowly healing thanks to dragon medicine. Katie continued her studies, filling tablet after tablet with notes about dragon culture and technology. On the evening before the flame ceremony, Commander Palmer's face appeared on Katie's communication device. The signal was weak across the vast distance, but his relief at seeing them alive was clear. "Earth is going crazy," Palmer said without greeting. "The diplomatic corps is on its way. So are the scientists. And probably the military, knowing them. You three have started something huge." "We just helped some kids," Daniel said. Palmer smiled tiredly. "That is exactly what I told them. But apparently helping kids can change the universe." He paused. "Be careful out there, Hayes. Not all dragons are going to be happy about this. And not all humans either, for that matter. There are people back home who think you have given away too much, shown too much weakness." "Do you think that?" Daniel asked. Palmer was quiet for a moment. "I think you did what I hoped someone would do for my daughter if she was lost and scared. That is all that matters to me." The signal cut out, leaving them alone again on an alien world. That night, Daniel lay awake in his room. The pendant Kira had given him warm against his chest. Through the window he could see the volcanoes painting the sky with their eternal fire. Somewhere in the dwelling, Silver slept with his siblings, preparing for the ceremony that would give him his true name and set him on his life's path. Daniel thought about Ironjaw's words. About weakness and strength. About what it meant to show compassion in a universe that often rewarded cruelty instead. He thought about the 5 baby dragons tumbling out of that pod, scared and alone and dying. He thought about the choice he had made in that moment to help them, even though it would have been easier and safer to walk away. And he realized something. Maybe compassion was not weakness. Maybe it took more strength to care than to turn away. Maybe the universe needed more people willing to kneel down and say to a frightened child, no matter what species, "You're safe now." Outside, Pyaxis turned under its 2 moons. In 3 days, humanity and dragons would take another step toward understanding each other. And it had all started because one man made a promise to a scared baby and meant to keep it. Tomorrow would bring the flame ceremony. Tomorrow, Silver would get his true name. Tomorrow, the universe would see what could happen when 2 species chose connection over fear. But tonight, Daniel simply lay in the darkness and hoped that he had made the right choice. For Silver. For humanity. For all the lost children in the universe who just needed someone to tell them they were safe. Dawn came to Pyaxis in shades of gold and crimson, the twin suns rising over the volcanic plains like 2 great eyes opening on a new day. Daniel stood in the ceremonial courtyard wearing formal robes that Kira had provided, his environmental suit hidden beneath the flowing fabric. Around him, hundreds of dragons gathered in silence, their scales catching the early light. The courtyard was ancient, carved from a single piece of volcanic rock 10,000 years ago. In its center stood a raised platform surrounding a pool of liquid fire, magma channeled from deep below the surface. The heat was intense even through Daniel's suit. He could not imagine what it must feel like for the baby dragons who would soon stand at its edge. Amy and Katie stood beside him, equally dressed in ceremonial robes. Katie kept fidgeting with hers, clearly uncomfortable with the formal setting. Amy stood still, but Daniel could see her hands trembling slightly. "I have studied their culture for days," Katie whispered, "and I still do not fully understand this ceremony." An old dragon nearby, one of the historians from the Hall of Histories, overheard and spoke. "The flame ceremony reveals truth. When a young dragon first breathes fire, the color and intensity of that flame shows their nature, their path in life. Red flames indicate warriors. Blue flames show scholars. Green flames mark healers. Gold flames are the rarest, indicating leaders. What if they cannot make fire?" Amy asked. The historian's expression grew somber. "Then they are flameless. Without fire, a dragon cannot fully be part of the pack. It is our greatest shame and sorrow." A deep drumbeat echoed across the courtyard. The crowd parted and Kira entered with her 5 children. The babies had grown in the weeks since the rescue. They were larger, stronger, their scales bright and healthy. But they were still small, still children, and Daniel could see the fear in their eyes as they looked at the pool of fire. Silver saw Daniel in the crowd and chirped, a sound of recognition and relief. Kira placed a gentle claw on her son's head, keeping him from running to the human. "Today," Kira's voice rang out across the courtyard, "my children take their place among the Flamewing pack. Today they receive their true names. Today they show us who they will become. Scale Mora stepped forward from where the council members sat on raised thrones. Let the ceremony begin. Jade went first, the green dragon with the healed wing. She approached the pool of fire slowly, her steps careful. When she reached the edge, she took a deep breath. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a thin stream of emerald green flame burst from her mouth, hanging in the air like frozen light before fading. The crowd made sounds of approval. Green flame, a healer. Your true name is Jadewing, Kira announced. May you bring comfort to those who suffer. Penny went next, the copper-colored female. Her flame came quickly, a bright blue that sparkled like stars. A scholar. Your true name is Copperscale, Kira said. May you bring wisdom to those who seek knowledge. Navy, the dark blue male breathed red flame. A warrior. His true name became Stormclaw. Scout, the troublemaker, breathed orange flame, marking him as a craftsman, one who would build and create. His true name was Quickfire. Then it was Silver's turn. The baby dragon walked to the pool's edge with his head held high, but Daniel could see him shaking. Silver looked back at his mother, then at Daniel in the crowd. Their eyes met across the distance. Silver turned to the pool and breathed. Nothing happened. The crowd murmured with concern. Silver tried again, his small chest expanding with effort. Still nothing. A third time and a fourth with the same result. The murmuring grew louder. Flameless. The word passed through the crowd like wind through grass. Flameless. Ironjaw's voice cut through the noise. The human has corrupted him. His bond with the alien has broken his fire. Other voices joined his. Flameless. Corrupted. Send the humans away. Kira moved to defend her son, but Scale Mora raised a claw for silence. Let the child try once more. In peace, the crowd quieted. Silver stood at the pool's edge, small and alone. His head drooped with shame. He had failed. Failed his mother, failed his pack, failed himself. Daniel could not stand it anymore. He pushed through the crowd, ignoring the gasps and protests. He climbed onto the platform and knelt beside Silver, putting himself between the baby dragon and the pool of fire. Hey, Daniel said softly, removing his helmet so Silver could see his face clearly. Look at me. Silver's golden eyes met his, filled with tears. Remember when we first met? Daniel continued. You were scared then too. You were lost and alone, and you did not know if you would ever be safe again. But you were brave enough to come to me. You were brave enough to trust a strange creature you had never seen before. He placed his hand on Silver's small head. That took more courage than any fire ever could. You do not need to prove anything to anyone. I know who you are. Your mother knows who you are, and that is all that matters. But I am flameless, Silver said in halting English, speaking for the first time. I am nothing. You are everything, Daniel replied. You're brave and kind and curious. You are my friend. And that will never change, flame or no flame. Kira had joined them on the platform, tears running down her scaled face. Your teacher speaks truth, my son. You are more than your fire. You always will be. Silver looked at his mother, then at Daniel, then at his siblings watching from nearby. Slowly something changed in the baby dragon's expression. Fear gave way to determination. Shame gave way to strength. I am not nothing, Silver said, his voice stronger now. I am Silver, son of Kira, student of Daniel, and I am enough. He turned to the pool and breathed. This time fire came, but it was like no flame anyone had ever seen. It started as gold, bright and pure. Then it shifted to blue, to green, to red, to orange, cycling through every color before settling on something new entirely. White flame, shot through with rainbow colors that danced and shifted like the northern lights Daniel had seen on Earth. The courtyard exploded with sound. Dragons roared in shock and awe. The council members rose from their thrones, their ancient eyes wide with wonder. Impossible, Mora breathed. In 10,000 years there has never been white flame. Kira stared at her son, then at Daniel. What does it mean? The old historian who had spoken to Katie earlier stepped forward. His scales were shaking with emotion. The ancient texts speak of white flame. They call it the flame of unity. It appears only once in a generation, marking one who will bridge divides and bring together those who were separate. He looked at Daniel. Your son's bond with the human has not corrupted his fire. It has awakened something we thought was only legend. Ironjaw pushed to the front of the crowd. This is wrong. Fire should be one color, pure and true. This mongrel flame is an abomination. but other voices rose to counter him. Dragons Daniel had never met spoke up in defense of Silver. The debate grew heated, voices raised in argument throughout the courtyard. Wisescale Mora's voice cut through the chaos. Enough! The courtyard fell silent. The council will deliberate on the meaning of white flame, but this much is clear to all who have eyes to see. She looked at Silver, then at Daniel. This child has shown us something we had forgotten. That bonds of friendship and family can transcend species. That compassion is not weakness but the highest form of strength. That the future belongs not to those who cling to the old ways out of fear, but to those brave enough to forge new paths. She turned to address the entire assembly. Silver, son of Kira, student of Daniel Hayes, your true name is Bridgeflame. May you bring unity where there is division. May you show us the path forward. The crowd erupted again, but this time the sounds were of celebration mixed with uncertainty. Change was coming, and not everyone welcomed it. Over the next hours, as the ceremony concluded and the crowds dispersed, Daniel stood with Kira and her children. All 5 babies, now bearing their true names, played together in a side courtyard while the adults watched. What happens now? Daniel asked. Kira looked at him with an expression that was part gratitude, part worry. Now the real work begins. Bridgeflame has shown us a new possibility, but possibility alone does not create change. That requires effort, sacrifice, understanding on both sides. Will there be resistance? Fierce resistance, Kira confirmed. Ironjaw is not alone in his beliefs. Many dragons fear what your species represents, and I suspect many humans will fear us as well. She was right. Over the following weeks, as Earth's diplomatic vessels arrived at Pyaxis, the debates raged on both sides. Some humans saw the dragons as potential allies, a chance for humanity to learn from an ancient wise species. Others saw them as threats, powerful beings who could crush human colonies if they chose. Among the dragons, similar divisions formed. Some packs embraced the possibility of friendship with humanity, others closed their borders and refused contact. But through it all, Daniel kept his promise. He visited Pyaxis regularly, teaching Bridgeflame about Earth while learning about dragon culture. Amy established the first human-dragon medical exchange, sharing knowledge that helped both species. Katie became humanity's foremost expert on dragon technology, bridging the gap between biological and mechanical engineering. And slowly, painfully, with many setbacks and frustrations, the two species began to understand each other. 5 years after the rescue, Daniel stood once again in Kira's courtyard. Bridgeflame was no longer a baby. He stood 2 meters tall now, his scales gleaming with health, his white flame known across both human and dragon space. He had become exactly what his name suggested, a bridge between worlds. Do you remember that first day? Bridgeflame asked in perfect English. When you found us in the pod? Every detail, Daniel replied. You were so small, so scared. I still remember what you said. Bridgeflame looked at his former teacher with affection. You said you're safe now, and you meant it. That changed everything. Daniel smiled. Sometimes the smallest promises matter most. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the twin suns set over Pyaxis. Behind them, the first human embassy stood next to the traditional dragon dwellings, a symbol of how far both species had come. There was still much work to do, still prejudice to overcome, still fear to address, still countless problems to solve. But every time Daniel doubted whether it was worth it, he looked at Bridgeflame and remembered 5 baby dragons tumbling from a pod, alone, and dying in the cold of space. He remembered making a choice to help, even when it would have been easier to walk away. He remembered that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply care, and he remembered that every friendship, every alliance, every bridge between different people begins the same way, with one person, one being, willing to extend their hand and say, "You're safe now." That promise, made at dawn in a damaged mining station, had echoed across the stars and changed everything. And it all started because Daniel Hayes saw 5 lost children and refused to let them die alone in the dark.